Hi, and welcome to this FBTV webinar. We are going to be focused today, obviously, talking about the transportation industry. Specifically, though, we're going to be talking about working as a freight broker. Not only working, but how to get started, what to expect, the pay, and a number of other topics that pertain to working as a freight broker. This is somewhat of a primer. If you've been looking for information about being a freight broker, this is the webinar that you wanted to attend. Now, before we get started, a little bit about me. My name is Mike. You may recognize me from the FBTV videos, broadcast, radio, YouTube, whatever. But I am a full-time consultant for Tautoa. Tautoa, if you'd like to check out Tautoa, feel free to do so. We'll talk more about that later on in the webinar. But Tautoa, you can write this down, TALTOA.com. We are a transportation and logistics training and consulting firm, and we specialize in helping freight brokers, freight broker agents, people meet their goals, achieve their dreams, so to speak. Now, before we can get started doing anything about being a freight broker, we first need to know a little bit about the history of freight brokering. There are a lot of stories and theories about how freight brokering actually began. Everybody has their own theory. I've seen and heard theories from Pedro the Mule all the way through reading things on the internet where they are going to tell us the history, but they never get right to it because nobody knows. Nobody knows the exact history of how freight brokering began. And of course, we can all have our theories, and I have mine as well. And my theory is somebody sitting next to the water one day, watching all the ships come in. Now, back several hundred years ago, thousands of years ago as well, a ship would pull in, unload their cargo, and that ship may be in port for weeks, months, some even years at a time, not only making repairs, but finding more freight to load on their ship to go back to where they came. And I imagine it was someone like you or I that was sitting on the bank of that waterway, and they were thinking to themselves, if these ships had a load waiting, when they arrived and got unloaded, they would probably pay me to provide that service. Now, again, I don't know if that's true or not. That's just theory. Just always been in my mind. I wish there was a history, but there isn't. There's no one really credited, no country credited, no individual, no company, nothing like that credited for the start of freight brokering. Now, when it comes to trucking, in the early days of trucking, which actually wasn't that long ago, you probably go back 25, 30 years, and that would be considered early days in freight brokering, although freight brokering, yes, it did go back more than that. But as recent as 25 to 30 years ago, there were still freight broker operations operating the same way they did back in 1920. Basically, a trucking company would contact a broker. They would go through the setup with that broker, and the broker the setup with the trucking company. As the trucking company knew that they would have trucks unloading in the broker's area, they would call that broker, let them know the truck was coming, and the broker would go to work trying to secure a load. When the truck delivered the load, driver would go to the truck stop. Usually that is where these broker offices were located, at a truck stop. They would go to the truck stop, find the broker's office, go in, let the broker know that the driver of that truck was there. And if that broker had already secured a load for that truck, that driver would get the paperwork, the information, and go to pick up the load. However, if that broker had not already secured a load for that truck, there were a lot of chairs. The driver would sit and wait. Today, we've come a long way. Matter of fact, back just 20, 25 years ago when I started brokering, the fax machine was the number one tool. Today, the fax machine is still utilized, not as much because we have email, but it's all done today via the telephone and the computer and occasionally the fax machine.
So as you can see, there's really not a lot of history to freight brokering as far as that goes. The equipment needs to be able to be a freight broker is bare minimal, but let me warn you here. You don't want to just get by because you're creating a perception. The perception you create will be your customer's reality. Matter of fact, we did a video on that not very long ago. You can find that video on YouTube. But so many times I see people try to get by. Maybe they start out with the cell phone. They, instead of having some type of fax machine, copy machine, some type of tool where they can create PDF documents, they download an app like the what is it called, Cam Scanner, and they get PDF document scans that look like this. This is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. You don't want to try to broker using a cell phone. As far as being your internet tool, your computer, yes, you can get by using a telephone or a cell phone for your telephone, but not as a tool for scanning or faxing or trying to send emails or, use it for what it's for. It's a telephone. You need a computer. Laptop or a desktop. I'll just tell you that right now. I see people try to do it with the tablet, and the problem with the tablet is it's so slow. The typing is slow. Now, you may have an attachment for the keyboard, but believe me, you're going to be a lot happier, a lot more comfortable with a laptop. You can get a good laptop for under $1,000 that will last you for years, and it's going to be a write-off. Okay, tax write-off. Now, your printer. Get a laser printer. The reason is a laser, it's going to be black and white. It's going to save you money, but you can get them in a multifunction version. You want it to be able to print, copy, and scan. Because you're going to be needing to send documents via email. And this goes back to that phone scan. That's just so unprofessional, like we looked at a moment ago. With a scanner, you can convert those documents to PDF and get them sent right out to your customer or carrier, whichever one, and it's going to look professional, bottom line. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, now let's talk about the process. The process for working as a freight broker. You probably already have a pretty good idea that working as a freight broker is sales. You're selling to the shipper and you're selling to the carrier. Now, don't let that word selling get in the way of your success. Although a freight broker is selling, it's not in the traditional sense of the word. When one thinks about a salesperson, one thinks of someone whose job it is to talk others out of their money for a product or service. We're not doing that in the traditional sense. As a freight broker, we are helping shippers get trucks and helping trucking companies get loads. We don't charge extra. There is no setup fee, no anything. We're truly there to assist the shippers and the carriers. Now, to better understand this idea is to understand the process from the freight broker's point of view. First, we need a company that would require trucks to transport their products to their customers. Often these companies will be manufacturers, the manufacturer of the product being shipped. Each of these companies employ a sales team that does nothing but sell their products by the truckloads to their customers on a daily basis, as well as seeking out new customers. As they sell a load to a customer, they will then turn that load over to shipping, so shipping can arrange transportation for that load via truck. Keep in mind that this number of loads will vary company to company, day to day. Some companies may have only a few loads a month, while others may have several hundred loads a week. It's the responsibility of shipping to find trucks for every load that has been sold. Shipping can't go back to sales and say, sorry, you're going to have to cancel that order. I can't get a truck. That's the fast way to the unemployment line for somebody in shipping. So how do these individuals in shipping find trucks to move these loads? Well, the first thing they'll do is look at the list of available loads. These people in shipping have experience with their loads. They will recognize the loads that will be easy to move, as well as the ones which will require work on their part. What makes a load easy to move? What makes a load attractive to a trucking company? Ask 10 different trucking companies that question and you'll get 10 different answers. But every single one of their answers will be based on the destination of the load, the weight of the load, and the rate of the load. Knowing this, the person in shipping will contact their favorite trucking companies or freight brokers, the ones which they have the best relationship, their buddies, their pals, and offer them the best of that day's loads. The remaining loads would be put on a load list and sent to all of the freight brokers and trucking companies on a first-come, first-served basis. This means whoever gets the truck first will get the load. New freight broker working with a new company, expect their daily load list. Now, before we go any further, understand that these loads on this list will all be transported. Someone is going to broker that load. A trucking company is going to haul that load. They're just not the pick of the litter. By receiving the company's load list, you have a proverbial foot in the door. You can build a relationship. You can work toward being that person in shipping's favorite vendor. Okay, so I hope you understand that a freight broker, yes, you are selling. Yes, you are a salesperson, but not in the traditional sense of the word. You're not selling a product, so to speak. You're selling a service. But for the shipper or the carrier to use your service, it's free. You're making your money from what the customer is paying you to move the load. Simple enough. Now, having customers that you have a relationship with, that's vital. It takes time. Don't expect to start brokering today and be making $1,000 tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way. It will take weeks, if not months, to build your customer base up to where you're able to make that kind of money. And that all boils down to the type of relationship you have with your customer. Now, you may be wondering, well, how do I get started? That's a good question. Let's talk about that for a moment. Now, before we go any further, I'll tell you right now that 99% of the time, we recommend our clients to begin as a freight broker agent. The reason we recommend this will become crystal clear by the end of this video. Let's first talk about becoming a freight broker company. To begin operating as a freight broker company, you'll want to be incorporated. If you have a trucking company and you're wanting to add freight broker services, start a new corporation for the freight brokerage. This is for liability purposes. Should the unexpected happen with either the trucking side or the broker side, only that specific entity will be affected, leaving the other untouched and fully functional. With that said, to become a freight broker, you will need to make application with the FMCSA. You can use the FMCSA website to file the license application on your own, but we highly recommend using an agent to do this for you. This way you know everything is done right. Using an agent, yes, it's going to cost you a couple of $100 more, but it's well worth it for the peace of mind. In addition to a freight broker license, you'll need a UCR and a BOC3. The agent that files your application will take care of this for you as part of their service. Now, the last piece of the puzzle is obtaining a $75,000 property broker surety bond. Your agent won't be able to assist you with this. You'll need to obtain a bond on your own. Shop around, as the price of a bond can vary from $1,000 a year to over $7,000. The price will depend on your credit and your transportation experience. To find a bonding company, just do a search for property broker surety bonds or freight broker bonds, and you'll have plenty of options to choose from. Now, everything discussed so far is to meet the legal requirements for having your own freight brokerage company. The key word here is legal. Believe me when I say legal isn't enough. You want protection and tools to become operational. This protection involves insurance. Most freight broker companies carry general liability, errors and omissions, and even contingent cargo. General liability insurance is an added layer of protection, and quite often your customers will require that you have it before they will work with you. $1 million in general liability insurance is standard. As this is a business that deals in contracts, errors and omissions protects your business from errors or omissions on these contracts. A few years ago, we had a client that moved a load of aluminum pipe. The freight broker forgot to put on the carrier load confirmation that the load needed to be tarped. The carrier did not tarp the load. The carrier arrived at the destination, and the entire load was refused because it hadn't been tarped. The aluminum pipe had oxidized in transport and turned pink. The broker had to buy the entire load. Their errors and omissions insurance covered the cost minus the deductible. Contingent cargo insurance protects your load should the carrier's insurance fail. In 25 plus years in transportation, I've never seen a contingent cargo insurance claim. The reason is pretty simple. The broker makes sure that the carrier's insurance is in force and has enough coverage to protect the load. Most brokers carry this type of insurance more for their customers' benefit than their own protection. Contingent cargo insurance makes the customer feel, well, all warm and fuzzy inside. Another must-have for a freight brokerage is what is known as a TMS, short for Transportation Management System. This is the heart of your operation. It stores all your data, customers, carriers, loads, details. It ties in with your accounting tools so that you can export the data and create invoices. You'll build your loads at the TMS to generate a load confirmation for the carrier. TMS costs vary from as little as $100 a month to as high as, well, you want to go. Keep in mind that if you have other brokers that will be using the TMS, you'll have to pay individually for each broker. So you're probably getting the idea that starting a freight brokerage is just a little more than getting legal. These overhead costs can add up quickly, but wait, we're not done. There's more. And unfortunately, when I say wait, I say that in the literal sense. Before you see a penny, well, you've got to get customers. You've got to move loads. Then you've got to invoice the customer and wait for them to pay you. More times than not, you're paying the carrier before you get paid by the customer. You want to make sure you're paying the trucks, the trucking companies, the carriers, as fast as you can, definitely within 30 days. During your first year of operation, you'll want to establish your credit rating. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. You'll find that many carriers won't work with you because you're too new and have no credit rating as a freight broker. Carriers want to make sure they're going to get paid. As a new broker, you may need to offer these carriers load advances so they will haul your loads. This takes capital. Now, with that said, you may have talked to someone, worked it out in your mind, thought about it, and found your answer lies with a factoring company. I'll tell you right now, that's not a good idea, not as a freight broker. On the surface, a factoring company may seem like the answer to all of your problems. In reality, it's probably the worst thing you can do as a freight broker. We'll discuss why you don't want to use a factoring company later in this training. Starting a freight brokerage company is more than just getting legal, much more. You have to plan for that dreaded startup period when you're trying to get customers, get loads, get trucks to move your loads, start building the relationships. But during this time, you're paying all the overhead without any money coming in at all. How long will this startup period last? Who knows? A couple of months, 6 months? You just won't know until you know. Which brings us to working as a freight broker agent and why starting as a freight broker agent might be your best option. First, as a freight broker agent, you are your own business. You'll contract to an existing freight broker, which eliminates the need to get a license, UCR, BOC3, a $75,000 bond, insurance, a TMS, have the operating capital. A freight broker agent earns their money just like the broker on loads moved, but you don't invoice the customer and you don't pay the carrier. That's on the broker. As a freight broker agent, you can focus on building your business without the overhead, responsibility, and liability. By starting as a freight broker agent, you're able to gain the experience, build your business, and have a solid foundation for moving forward. The customers you obtain as a freight broker agent are your customers, your book of business. Now, after you've built your business, have a solid customer base, and a carrier following, that's the time to take the next step and become your own freight brokerage company. That dreaded startup period is behind you. Which brings us to how a freight broker or freight broker agent actually makes money. Well, it all has to do with the net of the load. Everyone has a different name for this net. Load net, gross profit. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. If you're the freight broker, this net comes when your customer pays you. But what is the net? Load net, gross profit, whatever you wish to call it, is simply the difference between what the customer paid and what you paid the truck. So say the customer agreed to pay $2,500 to move the load from point A to point B. You agreed to pay a truck $2,000 to move the load. The load net, $500. Now, as mentioned a moment ago, if you're the freight broker company, you'll get the $500 when the company receives payment from the customer. There's a process that must be followed in order for the broker to get paid. What is this process? First, obviously, the carrier must deliver the load. The driver submits the paperwork for the delivered load to their company, which in turn invoice the broker. Once the broker has received the invoice and the accompanying paperwork for the load, the broker can then invoice the customer. Now, while you're waiting for your payment, you will need to pay the truck. You want to make sure you're paying the carrier within 30 days of carrier's invoice, sooner if possible. When a carrier sees your load on the load board, often the load board will display your credit rating and the average number of days it takes you to pay a carrier. Obviously, the higher the credit rating and the shorter the time to pay will greatly influence a carrier's decision to work with you. Well, that's well and good, but what about a freight broker agent? How does a freight broker agent get paid? The freight broker agent earns their money from the load net just like the broker. The difference is that the agent makes a commission from the load net, and that commission varies company to company, but the average industry standard is 60% of net. This means that if this was your load and it had a $500 net, you would earn 60% of the net, or $300. The freight broker retains the $200. Now keep in mind, the freight broker's got to make money, right? In addition, they are paying all the administrative costs, such as staffing, billing, insurance, and all the other expenses associated with operating the brokerage. And don't forget, the freight broker is also paying the truck before they see a penny from your customer. Now, you may be asking, when does a freight broker agent get paid? Well, like any job, the company makes that decision. Could be weekly, every 2 weeks, twice a month. Every broker is going to be different. Now, these pay periods for a freight broker agent are known as settlements. Just because you moved a load today doesn't mean it will be on your next settlement. It depends on your broker. It depends on your broker and how these settlements are processed. There are 3 ways that brokers may choose to make settlements to an agent for loads moved. The most common, and the one we use in our mentorship program, is paid on proof of delivery. This means that when the broker receives the invoice from the carrier for a load moved by the agent, the commission for that load will be added to the agent's next settlement. This is much quicker than it may sound. Trucking companies don't mess around with invoicing a broker. They will often require that the driver overnight the paperwork for the load so that they can prepare and invoice that broker quickly. Some brokers even allow carriers to submit their paperwork and invoice for a load via email or fax. Usually it's just a few days before the broker receives the invoice from a carrier and your commission released. Now, the second way a broker may choose to make settlements is paid on pickup. Brokers that offer this type of settlement system normally require the agent
of experience, a proven track record, as they will be releasing the agent's commission to be paid after the load has physically been picked up by the trucking company. With this settlement option, it's not out of the ordinary for an agent to be paid their commission before the load has actually delivered. As a new freight broker agent, this type of settlement is one to strive for after you've built your book of business and have a proven track record. Don't expect this type of settlement option right out of the box. Now, the last settlement option is one that was popular many years ago, but not as much today. It's still around, rare, but it's still out there. This option is paid on receivable. Simply put, the agent's commission is added to their next settlement after the broker has received payment from the customer for the load moved. The reality of this settlement option is that it could be 4 to 6 weeks before the agent is paid on a load they moved today. Not a popular option, to say the least, and my recommendation to a new agent would be to avoid this type of settlement option if seeking a contract as a freight broker agent with a freight brokerage. So just how much can a freight broker actually make? Well, that's a loaded question, as it's really dependent on the individual. I can tell you this, that an average individual freight broker, once they have established themselves, should be doing a minimum of $1,500 to $2,000 a week in load net. Keep in mind that I said average. There are freight broker agents earning 6-digit incomes that are obviously doing much more than the $1,500 to $2,000 a week average. But everyone starts at the same place, the beginning. Those earning the 6-digit incomes, working as freight broker agents or even freight brokers, will all tell you it wasn't easy. It wasn't overnight, that's for sure. And it was hard work. They'll also tell you that it was worth it.
You know, I remember when I started my brokering career, for months it seemed like, and remember back at this time when I started, it was get in and learn it on your own, and I don't recommend that for anybody. It took months. But I remember starting out, I felt like that hamster in that cage, just spinning around and around and around, not getting anywhere. And then one day I woke up and I was so busy it wasn't even funny. I remember thinking that day. I can remember that day like it was yesterday. And the thought that went into my head was, when did I get this busy? What you do today is you're going to reap rewards tomorrow or later down the road, but you got to take that first step. We've gone over the history. We've gone over the process. We've gone over the best way to get started. As a broker agent, obviously, we recommend starting out as an agent. Now it's up to you. Is this something you really want to go after? Do you want to become a freight broker, start out as a freight broker agent, enter the transportation industry? Or maybe it's just not for you. If you're still seeking more information, I recommend becoming an FBTV insider. Yes, you got to subscribe to get to the inside content, the insider content, but it's less than $25 a year. If you are sure this is the course you want to take, you want to become a freight broker, yes, you want to start maybe as an agent, call me. I'd be happy to talk to you. You can call me at Taltoa. Matter of fact, in just a few minutes, or seconds, I guess I should say, you're going to be able to see a short clip about what we do at Taltoa. And if that interests you, I invite you to call me. My name is Mike. I'm the lead consultant at Taltoa. I hope this webinar has been helpful to you. Have a great day. Unless, of course, you've made other plans. We'll see you later.